I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, and this is the case that ended my career in neurology forever. Riverside Memorial Hospital sits on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, overlooking the Columbia River. For 15 years, I worked there as head of neurology, specializing in consciousness disorders and traumatic brain injuries. I thought I understood the human mind, its limitations, its boundaries, its absolute rules. Dr. Elena Vasquez was my colleague, my closest friend, and arguably the most brilliant neuropsychologist I'd ever worked with. She had this obsession with something she called the space between thoughts. Those milliseconds when the brain processes information we're not consciously aware of. Ward 7 was our long-term care unit. 12 patients in various states of consciousness, some in comas, others in vegetative states, a few with locked-in syndrome. Elena visited them daily, convinced that somewhere in their silence, they were screaming to be heard. But what she discovered in those quiet rooms would challenge everything we thought we knew about what it means to be awake or asleep. It started in November 2019. Elena had been working late nights in Ward 7, conducting what she called consciousness mapping, monitoring brain activity in our long-term patients using portable EEG equipment. She was looking for patterns, signs of awareness that traditional medical tests might miss. Marcus Rivera had been in a coma for 8 months following a motorcycle accident. 26 years old, formerly a music teacher. His brain scans showed severe damage to the frontal lobe, and his family had been preparing to make the difficult decision about life support. Then Elena noticed something strange in his EEG readings. Every night at exactly 11:47 p.m., Marcus's brain waves would spike into patterns typically associated with REM sleep. But here's the thing, coma patients don't dream. Their brains don't have the capacity for the complex neural activity required for dreaming. Elena documented these spikes for 3 weeks, always the same time, always lasting exactly 17 minutes, and always accompanied by what she described as subtle facial expressions, barely perceptible changes that suggested emotional responses to whatever was happening in his mind. But Marcus wasn't the only one. By December, Elena had identified a pattern across 5 different patients in Ward 7. All of them, regardless of their medical condition or brain injury, were exhibiting synchronized brain activity at the exact same time each night, 11:47 p.m. to 12:04 a.m. 17 minutes of impossible neural activity. Rachel Kim, a stroke victim who hadn't responded to stimuli in 2 years, would suddenly show signs of deep emotional processing. David Thompson, who had been declared brain dead following a diving accident, registered brain patterns that suggested active listening and comprehension. Elena started staying later, positioning herself in Ward 7 during those 17 minutes. She claimed she could feel a change in the atmosphere, a heaviness, like the air before a thunderstorm. The temperature would drop several degrees. Electronic equipment would occasionally malfunction. And then she started hearing the whispers. Have you ever been in a completely silent room, only to hear sounds that couldn't possibly be there? That's what Elena described. Voices too quiet to understand, but too persistent to ignore. On December 15th, Elena started keeping a detailed journal of her observations. She wrote about conversations she claimed to overhear during those 17 minutes. Not audible conversations, but something she described as mental echoes that she could somehow perceive when she focused completely on the patients. According to her notes, the patients were not just conscious during this time, they were communicating with each other. Marcus was teaching music to Rachel. David was sharing memories of his childhood with a woman named Catherine, who had been in a vegetative state for 4 years. Elena wrote that they had formed a community in whatever space their minds inhabited during those 17 minutes. They were supporting each other, sharing experiences, processing their trauma together in ways that their damaged brains shouldn't have been capable of. But there was something else in Ward 7 during those midnight hours. Something that Elena initially described as the observer a presence that seemed to watch the patient's mental gathering from the outside. What would you do if you discovered that unconscious patients were having experiences your medical training said were impossible? Would you report it, or would you keep digging deeper? By January 2020, Elena's journal entries became increasingly erratic. She wrote about making contact with the observer and discovering it wasn't some supernatural entity. It was another consciousness, but one that didn't belong to any of the patients in Ward 7. Elena believed she had identified the consciousness of someone who had died in the hospital years earlier, but whose awareness had somehow remained tethered to Ward 7. She called him the Navigator, a former patient who had learned to guide newly unconscious minds through what she described as the transition space. But the Navigator wasn't helping these patients find peace or healing. According to Elena's increasingly frantic notes, he was keeping them from moving on, trapping their consciousness in that 17-minute window each night because their awareness provided him with the energy he needed to maintain his own existence. Elena wrote that she could communicate directly with the Navigator by focusing her mind during those midnight hours. He told her things about the hospital's history that she couldn't possibly have known. Patients who had died years before she started working there, medical procedures that had been covered up, families who had never received accurate information about their loved ones' final moments. But then Elena made a discovery that changed everything. On January 28th, Elena's journal contained an entry that still gives me chills when I think about it. She had asked the Navigator about his own death, about how he had learned to remain conscious in Ward 7 after his body died. He told her that he hadn't died in Ward 7, he had died in Ward 3, the pediatric intensive care unit, in 1987. He had been 8 years old. Elena realized that the Navigator wasn't just trapping the current patient's consciousness, he had been doing this for over 30 years, collecting aware minds from patients throughout the hospital who were supposed to be unconscious or dying. He had built an entire mental community of trapped souls, all providing him with the psychic energy he needed to avoid whatever comes after death. But here's the part that made Elena's discovery so terrifying. The Navigator told her that he was getting stronger, that he was learning to extend his influence beyond Ward 7, that soon he wouldn't need to wait for patients to be unconscious. He would be able to trap the awareness of anyone in the hospital. If you were Elena, what would you do with this information? Who would you tell, and who would believe you? Elena's last journal entries from February 2020 described her attempts to break the Navigator's hold on the trapped consciousnesses in Ward 7. She tried everything, changing medications, altering room temperatures, even attempting to perform what she called guided meditation sessions to help the trapped minds find their way out of the Navigator's influence. But with each intervention, Elena wrote that the Navigator was becoming more aggressive. Equipment in Ward 7 started malfunctioning regularly. Patients who had been stable for years began showing signs of distress during daylight hours. Staff members reported feeling dizzy and disoriented when working the night shift. Elena's final entry was dated February 18, 2020. She wrote that the Navigator had made her an offer: join his community voluntarily and he would release the other trapped consciousnesses. Refuse and he would begin expanding his influence to other wards, trapping the minds of patients throughout the entire hospital. The last line of her journal reads, "I know what I have to do. If anyone finds this, please understand that consciousness isn't what we think it is. We're not alone in our minds. And death isn't the end of awareness. It's just the beginning of a different kind of prison. Take care of them for me." Elena didn't come to work the next day, or the day after that. Hospital security found Elena's car in the parking garage. Her purse was on the front seat. Her keys were in the ignition, but Elena was nowhere to be found. The police investigation lasted 3 months, but they never discovered any trace of where she had gone or what had happened to her. During the search of her apartment, investigators found her journal hidden in a lockbox under her bed. Every page was blank, completely empty, except for that final entry I just read to you. But here's the thing that made no sense. The handwriting analysis showed that the final entry wasn't written in Elena's handwriting. The writing matched the handwriting of Dr. Michael Harrison, a pediatric neurologist who had worked at Riverside Memorial in 1987. The same Dr. Harrison, who had been treating an 8-year-old boy named Tommy Chen when the child died from complications following brain surgery. Tommy Chen, the Navigator. Elena had somehow made contact with the consciousness of a child who had died 33 years earlier, and he had used her own hand to write his final message. But the story doesn't end there. After Elena's disappearance, I took over her research, convinced there had to be a rational explanation for everything she had documented. I started spending my own nights in Ward 7, monitoring the same patients, looking for the same patterns, and I found them. The 17-minute window was still happening, every night at 11:47 p.m. The same impossible brain activity, the same synchronized patterns across multiple unconscious patients. But now, there was a new consciousness in the mix, one that I recognized immediately from its EEG signature. Elena wasn't dead. Her awareness was trapped in Ward 7 with all the others, part of the Navigator's collection. I could sense her presence during those midnight hours, desperately trying to communicate, to warn me about what was happening. Through focused meditation during the 17-minute windows, I made contact with Elena's consciousness. She told me that the Navigator had kept his word. He had released the other trapped minds when she agreed to join him voluntarily. But he had lied about one crucial detail. Elena wasn't replacing the others. She was added to his collection. And now he was strong enough to begin trapping the consciousness of living, awake people throughout the hospital. Elena's final message to me was simple. He's coming for you next, Sarah. He's been watching you through my eyes, learning about your mind, your fears, your weaknesses. You have to leave the hospital. You have to leave tonight. And whatever you do, don't fall asleep in Ward 7. I resigned from Riverside Memorial the next morning. I told the administration that I was taking an extended leave of absence due to stress and grief over Elena's disappearance. But I never went back. The patients in Ward 7 are still there. Marcus Rivera died in his sleep 3 weeks after I left. The family said he looked peaceful. Rachel Kim was transferred to another facility when her insurance coverage changed. David Thompson's brain activity returned to normal patterns, and his family made the decision to remove life support. But according to my former colleagues who still work there, the 17-minute window continues every night. New patients, same impossible consciousness activity. The Navigator's collection grows stronger. And sometimes, late at night, hospital staff report seeing a woman in a white coat walking the halls of Ward 7. She never responds when they call out to her. And security cameras never capture her presence. But nurses who've worked there long enough recognize her immediately. Dr. Elena Vasquez is still working the night shift in Ward 7. She's still trying to help her patients. The only difference is that now she can never leave. I moved across the country after leaving Portland. I don't practice neurology anymore. I can't. Because once you understand that consciousness isn't confined to living brains, that awareness can exist independently of the body, everything you thought you knew about life and death becomes meaningless. Have you ever been in a hospital late at night and felt like you were being watched? Have you ever visited someone in a long-term care facility and gotten the sense that they were aware of your presence, even though medical tests said they couldn't be? If you work in healthcare, especially with unconscious or unresponsive patients, pay attention to the small details, the impossible coincidences, the synchronized behaviors that shouldn't be possible. Elena's journal is still locked away in evidence storage, but I know she's still writing in it somehow, somewhere in that space between sleeping and waking that she spent so long trying to understand. The question is, what is she trying to tell us now? Thank you all for being a part of these journeys with me. Your continued support truly means the world, and I absolutely enjoy reading your comments, especially when you share your own experiences and reactions. If these tales had you holding your breath or sent a chill down your spine, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more eerie and unsettling stories. Have you ever gone through something similar, or do you have your own mysterious encounter to share? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to read it. Every story you share helps deepen the connection in our growing community of horror lovers. There's more to come, so stay close for more chilling tales. And remember, the most terrifying stories are often the ones that feel a little too real. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.